You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devanin, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. Hello, all you beautiful souls. My sister Kim Sorrelle is back with me for the third time, and I'm so excited to have her with me. And Kim and I thought it would be so great to give back to everyone in the way of sharing our knowledge and experiences from writing books and podcasting. So in this episode, we're going to take a look inside the world of publishing and authorship. And we're going to give you some useful tips on the book writing process, from the outline to publishing, listing lots of great websites for you to use, and so much more information. And of course, you can always reach out to both of us as well. We love you. God bless you. Enjoy the show. Hello, my dearest sister, and welcome back for the third damn time to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. Hello, Kim.
Hello, I'm so happy to be back for the third time to the greatest podcast. I love it.
Thank you so much. Now, Kim Sorrelle is the author of two books. One is called Love Is, and the other one is Cry Until You Laugh. Ha, 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 ha. Sometimes you just got to get a good laugh in. And in the Hebrew Bible, it says that laughter, is good for the soul. It's a medicine that you can administer to yourself. Energetically speaking, it raises your vibration, although I don't really need to add anything to what Jesus said. I'm just saying that to help people understand that a little laughter goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. Yeah, it is healing for the soul, for sure.
Now, Kim's an entrepreneur. She speaks. She has a deep love in her heart for the people of Haiti. And she also has a deep love in her heart for black licorice. Now, in our previous episodes, we've talked about the health benefits of black licorice, what it was like when she lived and worked in Haiti with her nonprofit. We talked about voodoo and witchcraft and casting spells and all of that stuff. And we also talked about how this woman was able to survive cancer. And I think your nonprofit is Rays of Hope International.
It is, yes.
Yeah. And so all of that information will again be in the showy notes, as it always is. And so this is a very diverse and dynamic woman here, and I am just thrilled to have met her in my lifetime.
Well, right back at you. I feel like we are kindred spirits. We are connected forever, and I love it.
Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you.
And that's right.
So today's conversation will be like kind of off the cuff. Kim's written two books. I'm just getting wrapped up with my first one, and I have to say the process is a bitch. It is bittersweet, and I found that it is a masochistic thing to want to be an author. It sounds glamorous and all glorious, and we do give people who have successfully written books a lot of props in society. Now I know why. This is some painful shit to put yourself through. But if you've really got something worth saying, that I also want to say is worth doing. So we're going to be talking about book publishing and just kind of giving an inside look to what it means to be an author. So what you got to say about it, girl?
Yeah, you are so spot on. I think there are so many people that talk about writing a book. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody's got a book in them, I think. But getting it on paper is a painful process. It is not all sugars and cream and black licorice. It is, some, I don't know, whatever trash and garbage and craziness that goes into actually getting it down, for sure.
Right. And then I think the main thing to do is to be praying about whether or not you should just like with podcasting, a lot of people get into it because it looks glamorous and it looks easy, but you have to be called to that thing. Excuse me. You gotta that's gotta really, really be like a part of your purpose in life. You can't do it for money because you don't know how long it's gonna take the money to follow this sort of thing. You can't do it for you have to do it because you want to help people, for something other than yourself. And so I think that that's the beginning of it is to do some real soul searching and some meditation and to find out the why. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? And that's what you're going to be able to pull on in those long nights when you're up looking at the manuscript for the 15th time and you're still finding fucking mistakes. You want to pull your hair out. And so you're going to remember why you're doing it. And that's what's going to motivate you to finally get it fucking done.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that you hit it right on about motivation. Because if you're in it for the money, you are in it for the wrong reason. There are very few authors that actually make any money on a book. Of all the books that are written, there are only so many Stephen Kings out there. There are only so many John Grishams, people that are making good money with books. It is so much more work than you realize. Nobody is going to publicize it for you. You've got to be your own publicist. You've got to be your own feet. You have to go after it. It doesn't matter if you've got a traditional publisher or you're self-publishing, it is on you. Everything is on you. And the average book sells, I think, less than 100 copies. And so nobody makes money on 100 copies. So
It's
it's you got to know that you can't be in it for the money. It's got to be a different motivation.
so, but if someone's done this soul searching and this praying and everything like that, and they decided they want to write it, I'm going to add to this timing too, not just if you should, but when you should. Years and years ago, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, when I first started thinking, I sure would like to write a book. I don't think my motives were right. At this time, I was, attending churches, churches and shit. And, every damn pastor is an author. you know, and so I was around a whole lot of preachers writing books and they made it look really good. And every time they wrote a book, it's a huge thing. And so that affected me. And I was like, I want to be like that. I don't know. I want to be one of those glamorous people who writes books. And I didn't get past like page one because there was really nothing for me to say. Now that, but at that time, I never thought in a million years I'd be going to jail, getting HIV or being homeless, so now I actually have some shit to talk about. And now that I've paid my dues, I have like a justifiable reason to say the things I can say and do the things that I can do now, as opposed to before where I just wanted it for the glitz and the glam. You see?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that too. I mean, if I think you did have something to say 10 or 15 years ago because I've been reading your book and your home life wasn't necessarily all what everybody else experiences. Like you've got plenty to share and relationships growing up and whatever. But certainly the longer you live, the more you have to share. But you do need to do it for the right reasons and the right timing. And you kind of know when the timing is right if you're gonna actually do it.
Hmm. Now, having said that, when it comes to breaking the law, so all of my felonies I got in the year 2012 and about year 2013, I started taking notes on the book. I was ready to release it within like that year, but it never worked out that way. I couldn't get my thoughts organized and I didn't really have anyone to help me with it until about 2 years ago. But I also found out there's this little thing called statute of limitations where, if I don't want to criminal fucking make myself, criminalize myself, confess the guilt that they can prosecute me with, you have to wait a certain amount of years after the crime has been done before you blab about it in a book. So I didn't know that back when I was trying to force the thing to happen a year or two after my felonies. I needed more time. So see, everything happens when it's supposed to. And so it's been about 10 years since all the shit went down. And so we're well past statute of limitations. So I can talk about all the drugs I sold. and everything that the prosecutors can't come back, though. We must consider the legal implications too.
Yeah, yes. I don't write about any felonies, so that never occurred to me, but you're sharing some great wisdom, I'm sure, with a lot of people, so that's awesome.
And so I'm gonna throw some shade at the preachers that I was just talking about who write all these books. Okay. Usually, from my experience, they're a bunch of regurgitated sermons because preachers these days tend to write out their sermons each Sunday. So each Sunday, they're writing a little mini book. And then what they do each year is they go back and they compile all their sermons into a new book, give it a new cover and a new title, throw in a few little weak ass personal stories, and then put a different name to it. And then all the people are going to eat it up. Usually, those books are not very complex. They're about surface level, but Christians are an easy sell and church people are gonna buy any fucking thing. And I can say that because I used to be one of those church people at the conferences buying all the tapes and the books and the CDs and every fucking thing because I was starstruck by who was writing them. But I'm reading through it and I'm like, I know they said this in one of those services before. It's the same shit. And so I'm not mad at the preachers, they playing the game very well. But, it but I have observed that these mainstream preachers do not talk a lot about themselves. Now I haven't read everyone's books, but the ones that I did, their personal stories don't go into like gritty, painful detail about the shit they've been through. About all I've ever gotten from like a preacher is they might get a little upset from time to time, or what do they say? Or they'll generalize it like, sometimes I just don't live up to my best. They're not gonna tell me about that time they were sucking dick in the alley for cocaine and crack, or when they slapped a bitch across the face or got into a fight on the golf course. They don't really put themselves out there like that. Not enough, just enough. And I don't really appreciate that.
I think you're so right. There's something to be said for transparency and vulnerability, right? And the best books that I've written and or read, not written, but read, you see those things, when people dive a little bit deeper and expose themselves. And then you can relate. Because how do you relate to somebody who the worst thing that they ever do is get a little angry sometimes? Holy cow, if that's the worst thing you've ever done, you can skip. You don't have to go to confession. You don't have to do anything. You can just whatever, go straight to heaven and enjoy your life, I guess. I don't know what that kind of life is like because I think we all live a little bit deeper than that. So but I'll tell you too, the reason those preachers do well with their books is they've got a built-in audience. So they've got their platform, they've got their following, and everybody's going to buy their book. And that's why they can sell book after book after book. And even though they're not big differences one book from the next, they'll sell them all because they've got their base of people that will all buy them.
Yeah, I would dare say the people have been brainwashed into it. I was once one of those people, and I'm not necessarily saying that's a negative thing if you've got some pastor whose ass you kiss like I used to kiss them, you know, before I was pulled out of the matrix. You know what? That's where you're at right now, then great. And if you're some and I mean, if somebody listening to this is my a light bulb may go on. They're like, "Hey, I can go in there and sell shit to those fucking Christian folk. They'll buy anything." You would be right. You would be right. But it felt kind of cliquish to me because like when I would be like at Lakewood and shit like that, and Joe's writing a different book a year than his wife wrote one. I really enjoyed her book. And now I think she has several that I noticed, like, other members of, like, the Osteen family that were not that were not necessarily at Lakewood also wrote books, and I was like, "Wait a minute. Seems like they've got a formula for this, like a plan, a process, a ghostwriter might be lurking in the back somewhere." Because, okay, if people are not just naturally gifted authors, okay, maybe your family just happens to be that everyone can write a book. No, bitch. You have a formula in place. from the sermons on down, some sort of sequence is being followed so that that all of y'all can stay on a writing schedule like this. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying I wish that they would share that with everyone else too.
Yeah, well, it's that you're spot on. And their name, you put Olstein on a book and it's gonna attract attention right away. You put Sorrelle on a book, if somebody's not heard of Sorrelle before, no one's gonna take a second look necessarily. You gotta come up with a way to get somebody to take a second look. But if you got the name, it sure helps.
And there are ways to do it. And I feel like you were way more transparent in your book than any preacher I've ever heard. So, in both of your books and everything like that. I remember sitting in church listening to those people thinking like, wow, and this is pretty much any church I've been in. Like, I really cannot relate with the people who are preaching to me, yet I'm listening to them and taking advice. I'm like, it doesn't sound like they've been through, even before my felonies and everything, it doesn't sound like they've been through half the shit I've been through in terms of the darker side of living. Why the fuck am I even listening to this person? Like, what gives them the right to tell me anything? And so, if you don't have Osteen behind your name or some other big name preacher out there, then here's what you can do. And this should not discourage you, because one thing I do know is that success is of the Lord. And the Hebrew Bible says that he will crown our efforts with success. And since you're writing this book, not for yourself, but other people, it should be enough if only a handful of people get a hold of it, because that's somebody's life you helped to change. And so if it sells 1,000,000 copies, all the better. But if it doesn't, well, then you should be fulfilled because your reasons were right. And
Mhm.
so you should not feel cheated. So we're not trying to be like, anybody but who God wants us to be, or whatever it is you believe in, or whatever it is your spiritual angle is at this. So your spiritual motivation is a better way to phrase that. But we don't self-publishing is a huge thing now. Not, being published is not like you don't have to be published to sell books or to be well known. I don't think that girl who wrote 50 Shades of Grey, I think she was self-published when she started. And then look at how long it took J.K. Rowling to get to where she is. So publishing houses don't always pin people accurately. Sometimes they get it wrong. So it's not all about knocking on a publishing house. You don't really have to do that anymore. You can if you want to, but some people have had really bad experiences with publishers.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And self-publishing is bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And and you can actually make more money self-publishing because you make more money per book. So there's pros and cons to both, to publishing and self-publishing. But Amazon in particular has made it so easy to self-publish. And they're the biggest bookseller in the world. And so to self-publish through Amazon and just follow their program is is really a great way to go. And it's a way a lot of authors get out there.
So we'll start at the beginning. And Amazon is good for those of you who are anti-Amazon and you think they're the devil and you don't want to fuck with them. There are other ways. The people who I use was called Draft to Digital, and this is going to be in the show notes. But that's Draft DRAFT, the number two, and then digital.com. And what happens is you can upload your electronic book through them, and then they will distribute it to like a shitload of places, maybe like 8 or 10 places. You can select Amazon or not. And my audiobook is also being made available through them to about like 30 or 40 different places, including Amazon and Audible. Some people don't like the complexity of like the audiobook world when it comes to like Audibles and their ACX standards, but there's different ways. So you can go directly through Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, and all of that, like what Kim is talking about, or you can use like Draft to Digital. There used to be a company called Smashwords, which also was a conglomerate place to publish, but Draft to Digital just bought out Smashwords. So we're just going to focus on Draft to Digital. So when you want to start writing a book, the first thing you always want, did you have something to say at that point?
No, no, but you're absolutely right. There are so many companies. There are companies that it is strictly self-publishing, that they get it into the format for you. They help you get your ISBN number. They, do the things that fill the blanks for you and how to get your book put together in a digital form. And then they, get it to whatever distributors. There's hybrid places that actually do some editing and do some stuff, but are a full on publisher that they'll do everything for you that a publisher would do. And that usually costs you money to have done. So there's options, lots of options.
Okay. So when we get started, we always want to start our book with an outline. This is no different than writing a research paper, term paper, whatever the fuck you want to call it, those annoying ass fucking shits that they made us do in high school and in college. And if you never went to high school or college, well, then we're going to explain it simply because you do not have to have a specific education to be an author. You just have to know why you want to talk about what you want to talk about. But an outline is simply a roadmap. If you're going to write anything, you need to have a structure to it. An outline is your skeleton. You got to hang some meat and muscles on them bones in a minute, but first you got to have a direction. You know what A, B, C, D. Now the outline for my book ended up being about like 10,000 words. Okay, when it was finalized, but I wrote about 2 books worth in one book because I didn't want to divide the story up. So my book's about 121,000 words finished. We cut it down from about 130,000 words, but it seems like in the industry, people 50,000 is the minimum they say from what I've come across. What have you heard about the minimum word count for books?
Yeah, 50,000 is kind of on the low end. And right, right. You want to, it's for nonfiction in particular, the 200-page mark is sort of a special mark in the industry to be right around to 200 pages. So yeah. And some are certainly going to go longer than that. Your story is longer than that. You got a lot more content. So there's rules that and guidelines, but they're all made to be broken.
Hell yeah, rules are made to be broken. Fuck yes. On a Tuesday morning, fuck yes. So when it comes to what she's saying, and I encounter this a lot, and it really just fucking made my head hurt, and just threw all the fucking rules out of the window. You have these parameters, and maybe that might matter more to a publisher, but when you're self-publishing, you're free to do what the fuck you want, which is beautiful. So when your book is done, you're gonna have to do something called formatting. So you're gonna outline the book, write the bitch, then you gotta format it, which means getting exactly the sizes, the margins, the fonts, the letters. Okay, then you publish it. So the formatting is where you can play with things like the font size and the page. Because if you notice on Amazon, some books might be like 6 inches by 9 inches, like my book is. Another one might be like 4 inches by like, it's like some small shit. So what you do is you have a lot of content like I did. You put it on larger pages to try to make the book not be so many pages. If you don't have a lot of content and you want to make the book a smaller format to stretch it out, to make it seem like you have more pages than you do. so,
Yeah.
so, and
The
so,
games you can play for sure. Yeah.
so,
It's
so now a good formatter will know how to do all of those tricks. If anybody needs a reference for a good formatter, I got you. I got you. Because writing, was my thing. The formatting and all them numbers and shit, I was like, oh, hell no. So I hired a formatter for my book. And now they're only like $50 to have it formatted, $50. We're not talking about a gargantuan amount of money here. You can certainly save $50 if you think that this is your life's work. And then even if you don't want to go in full with mashing the publishing buttons and stuff like that, then people will do that for you too for a small amount of money.
right. Yeah. I love the resource Fiverr. I don't
Mhm.
know if you've used Fiverr, but you can get anything done on Fiverr, including book formatting, book cover, the back of the book, the spine. You can get anything done, and prices can start at $10, $15, for somebody in some other country to do the work for you. And your time is more valuable than that. So it's definitely worthwhile to spend the 50 bucks or whatever to get your book formatted.
She said Fiverr, and of course, I'm going to put all this in the showy notes like I always do. I used a website called 99designs.com. for the cover for my podcast and for all of my books. And I met a guy in Greece who I now use exclusively for all of my design work because we're just so on the same page, but it's that same sort of concept. It's a website that brings a bunch of creatives together with people who need creatives, and then you can just get it all under one roof. So 599designs.com and then upwork.com is another one that you can use as well. So we're gonna do the outline, our ABC, small a, little a, number one, all the way over. You'll start your outline with broad strokes. You want to come up with your chapter titles, which you can change them anytime, but you need to kind of know what you're going to be talking about. And and then from there, you build it out. Each chapter is going to have this, and each bullet point can be like really thick. It could be a paragraph. And then when you go back to write the book, you're just going to take and really make the story come alive with all the scents and the flavors and all the words and the metaphors and all the nice verbiage to help it come alive to the reader. Now, if you're not good at this, then you can hire what's called a ghostwriter to either write it for you or to help you write it. And so when I was working with someone at the beginning during my process, until I decided to take it over for myself because they got on my nerves, we met and did like a Zoom meeting like every day for like 2 or 3 weeks for an hour at least. Sometimes it was 2 hours or maybe three. I did go through, since I was doing a memoir, I just went back from the time I was born to the present day and just wrote everything out that I could think of. And it was about 50,000 words when I was done. And then I went and put that into a chronological outline. And that's what I submitted to him. He didn't require it, because some ghostwriters can just listen to you talk and then turn into a book. But I wanted to be really thorough and detailed. And so I submitted that along with court documents and everything like that, because I really wanted my book to come alive. I was extra. You don't have to do all of that. But there's a website called Reedsy, REEDSY.com, that is like dedicated to ghostwriters and the whole writing thing. But you can also find ghostwriters on like Upwork and probably Fiverr. You have a lot of options. So if you want to write a book and you're like, fuck, I don't know about if I can handle this outline shit, or if I don't have the time for it. And I've got this story, but I don't want to write it. Okay. Half the authors with their name on the front book didn't write the shit. Someone else wrote it for them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And if there's a book that you really like, that you really enjoyed that style of writing, find out if a ghostwriter has done it. Find out. A lot of times it will say, like, for instance, Don Piper's story, 90 Minutes in Heaven, was written by Cecil McKay. So it says Don Piper with Cecil McKay. And so if you see that, then Cecil's done the writing. And so if you see a book that you really enjoy that style, you think it fits with what you've got, you can look into it and see who actually wrote the book, and maybe that's somebody to tap into.
hmm now the high end ones, sometimes they may be hard to reach, so, and then sometimes, they're going to cost more, ghostwriters. The highest that I came across in my research was around like maybe 70 to 90,000. But, you have like, I think on Upwork, I was looking at them where they may be charged from like more hourly, like 10 to 50 an hour. I think I saw, I was breezing over it briefly before we got on this call this morning. The prices are all over the place. It just depends on what you can afford and what you want to pay and how serious you're taking your story, but more to the point, how you connect with the person who's going to be writing for you. Because you're getting ready to spill all kinds of tea with this bitch. You got to feel like you can trust them, because you're going to tell that ghostwriter a hell of a lot more than gets released to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, interview people. You don't have to go with somebody just because you go on one of these websites and that's the name that comes up. Interview them. You're going to be paying them. So take the time to get to know them, let them get to know you, and see if it's a fit. If it's not a fit, walk away. No harm, and find somebody else. There's plenty of people out there.
There are, but through these websites also, they monitor the work that's being done. And so, and you don't pay them until the work, until portions of the work are done. Like with the guy who did my audiobook formatting through Upwork, I could go in there and see like his computer screen, what he was doing, the time it was taking. like their screenshots and files and stuff like that. So they act as a good mediator, so you don't have to worry about somebody running off with your money, you know.
Right,
Like,
right. It's a good thing. Yes.
but if you choose to go off the grid and not use one of these websites, sometimes people will meet people on these websites and then start paying them separately. That's fine too, but pay them through PayPal or through some sort of way that you're paying for goods and services. So if some shit goes down, you still have some insurance.
Hmm.
And,
Right. Great advice. Yes.
but
Yeah.
that's a super relief. So now if you feel like you can't do the outline and you can't really write it, but you've got something you want to say, well, that's what ghostwriters are for. And it happens more often than you think. And you don't have to put their name on the front cover of your book. That's not what their job is. Their job is to write, not to be the face of it. But if you like them and you want to, then you can. That's up to you. You're the author. You own the work when it's all said and done. And so now you've got your book written. You can go to 99 Designs, get you a cover done. They'll do the inside flaps, the spine, all of that. Or you can go to Fiverr, wherever. You may know your own graphic person. These people know that books have to be formatted through certain sizing and everything like that. They got you. You don't have to try to do this all at once. You will do this one step at a time. You will not get ahead of yourself. So you won't worry about how how the story ends before it begins. I'll say it like that. Generally speaking, although there can be exceptions to that, depending on how you're going to write it. If you're not doing a memoir, my knowledge is kind of, it's a little bit different if you're going to go like more scholastic or something like that. But, people, can write just about whatever you want. I say it's at least worth looking into. Once you have the book written, now we need to get us a copyright. You don't have to get a copyright. The moment you open up a document and I don't know, maybe use something other than Microsoft Word. That's what I use. That Microsoft Word doesn't really translate well to formatting, but my formatters were able to figure it out. But it's a bitch if you do it in Word, don't go in there and try to fuck with page numbers and the headings and stuff like that. Just let it be a plain fucking document with just the typing. Because if you try to format it and make it all book like, Word is just gonna fuck it up. Just don't.
Right.
Give it to a formatter so they can open up them slinky ass apps they have that you probably won't because I don't have those apps, but my formatters do, and they can Shazam me that shit, like real quick.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. A couple things I'd like to throw in. And one is it's all well and great, like what you're saying. An outline can be everything because it can make writing the actual book so much easier when you know this is what your chapter one's going to be about. This is what your chapter two is going to be about. When you have the ideas, then you can just put it on paper. But the motivation to actually write can be difficult for people. And so everybody has a different formula for that. Some people are early morning writers and will get up in the morning and 5 days a week, or they'll commit whatever time and an hour a day or whatever. Like, I think it can seem so overwhelming when you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to write a 200-page book. How am I going to do that? It can seem like this great big mountain, but it's sort of like the analogy of the how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? And so commit to a half an hour, commit to so many words a day. Figure out when your best time to write is. Are you better at night? Like, is that when things come into focus for you? Are you better first thing in the morning? What is your schedule like? What is your time like? And put it on the calendar if that's what you need to do and commit to the time. That's how you're going to actually get it from idea to book is making sure that happens. And there's something that all writers know, all authors who are doing this know, but a good thing to know is show, not tell. So in a movie script, you tell, but in a book, you show. You let people see the picture for themselves. You don't have to tell them every intimate detail. You describe things. You don't have to say somebody was nervous. You say something more like and the sweat started, coming on his upper lip and brow and, whatever. Then he was nervous, right? So it's show not tell is a big thing with books.
Right. That was a warning that I came across early in my writing is to not to get caught up on being overly detailed, which is why I decided to go with the ghostwriters because I was too, at least at first, I was too attached to my story. I knew I was way too emotional about it to give it a true objective look. I was going at it trying to get down to like every like little polka dot in the room, really unnecessary. So I needed somebody to help me with that. So so I'm gonna tell you why I had well, part of the reason why I had the falling out with my ghostwriter, and then I just took over the writing for myself and kind of, finished it. Because okay, so I had paid him like $40,000 cash to to do my book. I wanted a good writer. I didn't want someone who was just beginning. He wasn't actually on the highest end. Like I said, I came across 70 to 90,000 out there. He wasn't on the highest end. He wasn't on the lowest end. So, okay, let me go do what I got to do to make this money. I won't tell you what I did to come up with that money. All you need to know is that I acquired it. All we gonna say about that. It's
That's another book. That's your next
after my statutes of limitations passes for this. So, but what I didn't think to do now, this person wasn't very clear. We didn't really necessarily have an official contract, but there was some guidelines laid out. I got upset because we were in about the third revision, and he was telling me, "Well, that's it. That's as much for as your money is going to take you. I'm now going to charge you something like 150 or $200 an hour to continue." I ended up having to revise the book like maybe two or three more times. But from my perspective, and everyone's got their own perspective, I'm like, if I paid you $40,000, not to mention I flew this individual down here to Louisiana, and then we spent like a month traveling to Texas, Mississippi, New Orleans, seeing places and everything like that, all on my dime, you know, you know, so by the time it's done with him, it's like a good $50,000 project. I think that you should do full service and see the thing through to the end. Don't cut me off at two or three revisions because anybody who's written a book knows damn well you're going to have to review that. And I didn't know this at the beginning. I know it now. I didn't know this at first. You're going to have to go through that motherfucker time and time and time again, and you're still going to miss shit. We've all read books where we've seen a word misspelled or some spacing or a quote missing, and with great authors too. There comes a point where your head is just going to crack the fuck open if you look at that shit again. I think I did mine like 10, 12 times, and there's still shit that I find. I'm the most detailed person I know. I could have hired an editor, but I knew that if I hired and paid them, they would miss shit too. And then I would be pissed. So, and then there may be some editors that are that good that they don't miss anything. But so far, my experience has been with paying people to do a job that they always make mistakes. so, so I'm saying all that to say, if you go with a ghostwriter or formatter or anything, be sure that it is in the contract that whatever the rate is includes unlimited revisions until the shit is done. That way you don't fall into the trap that I did because now I'm thinking, okay, have you intentionally given me subpar writing on these first three revisions so that you can turn around and charge me $200 an hour because you knew the shit wasn't really as good as it was supposed to be, you know?
right, right. Yeah, yeah, and you paid a lot of money. That is a lot of money. I know some excellent ghostwriters that are bestsellers, that put out bestsellers and charge a lot less money than that and see the job through till the end. So yes, finding the right one that's very important. The right one with the right contract.
Right. That shit pissed me off because at first his name was on the front of my book with me, but that pissed me off so bad. Well, actually, he did something else that pissed me off and I snatched his name off the front cover of my book because of that. I was like, oh, hell no, this is not going to work, you know? And, and so some people just think a little bit more of themselves, I think, than they should, you know, and so yeah,
And
just
then, and yeah, I was just gonna say that, and it's not just working with a ghostwriter and self-publishing that you run into that. My second book, Love is traditionally published. And so they hire an editor, or they'll have an editor, like a content editor, not a periods and, punctuation and spelling kind of editor, but a content editor, creative editor. They'll have them in-house. Sometimes they hire them from outside, depending on your project and who they think you'll fit with. And the editor that my publisher hired, I picture her in Little House on the Prairie. And I think she's got, 6 or 7 friends, goes to a super small church. That's how I picture her. I don't know if it's true, but she wears long skirts with little tiny flower prints, and all of her friends look exactly like her. And so everything that I said that didn't fit into her little Christian box, she wanted out of my book. And she actually argued with me about my content. And I got to the point where I was just done with her. We were a horrible fit. She's probably really good with some people, not with me at all. I thought, man, my publisher doesn't even know me if they think that this woman is going to work with me, because it did not work. She made me think about a couple things, but honestly, I hope I made her think about a couple things. But in the end, I just kind of threw out most of anything she had to say and did it myself. So it can happen with a publisher, or you're doing it yourself. So make sure, it's okay to let somebody go. If it's not working, let them go, cut them loose.
and look, you can publish a book at any time in terms of traditional publishing, like what Kim is talking about going through a publishing house. You could create your own fucking publishing house, which technically is what you have if you self-publish. But like say, okay, so with Sex, Drugs, and Jesus, my memoir, I'm gonna give myself 3 to 5 years, okay, to see how the sales go and what I can do marketing it myself. If I don't feel like it has enough momentum, then I'll start to pitch the book to publishers at that time. So you don't have to, it's not like you have an ultimatum, either self-publish or do traditional the moment you write the book. You can you can change that later on.
Right. Right. At any time. Yeah, for sure.
Now, can you go from being published traditionally like you are, take it from the publisher and go back to self-publishing?
You kind of can't, because you sign a contract with them that they kind of own your book at that point. And so you really can't go back the other way. You'd have to be let out of the contract. A whole lot of things would have to happen. You'd have to change your book a bit to put it out there on your own. So once you're with a publisher, you're pretty locked in. But like you said, you can go. My first book, I went from self-publishing, and then I was picked up by a publisher. So you can go the other way, but not once you start with a publisher, you're you're all theirs.
I want you to say you were picked up by a publisher, and I've heard other authors say that before, that they find you and make you an offer that you find them.
I was at a writers conference, and the keynote speaker gave him a copy of my book, and then he contacted me and hooked me up with the publisher, because he liked it and thought that it should be out there more. And that's the one advantage, or what, there's several advantages either way, but one advantage of a publisher is that they have a network. And so they're getting your book not out to 8 places, but to, a couple hundred places. They can get it into book and mortar stores. It's hard to get a self-published book into Barnes and Noble, to put on the bookshelf of different bookstores. But a publisher can do that. A publisher has those connections, and they've got the network to get your book into every platform and everywhere online and stores and whatever. So your distribution right away with publisher is going to be different than with self-publishing.
Okay, so the trade-off is you make less per book with the publisher, but you get wider distribution. So that's the balancing act,
Right.
as opposed to making more per book with less distribution, doing it on your own.
That and money. Like when you published through a publisher, it doesn't cost you a dime. They pay you money up front for the book. And so you are making money. Whereas if you self-publish, you're paying for your cover and you're paying for the formatting. You might be paying for a ghostwriter. You've got some out-of-pocket money, but in the end, it can really pay off for you. So, and it's very difficult though, too, to get published by a publisher. It's not the same book world that it used to be. You have to have a platform. You've got to have so many people on your Facebook, so many people on Instagram. You've got to have an email list of thousands. You have to it- there has to be something about you that's going to be able to get into the hands of people right away, that you've got connections out there. If you are a movie star, or a singer or, somebody famous, publisher is going to look at you. If you're just a regular person like we are, whatever, it's hard to be noticed by a publisher and hard for a publisher to have motivation to, because they take the risk, because they're going to be laying out money right away. They're giving you money and then they're investing in you. They're paying for the editor. They're paying for the book cover. They're paying for all that stuff. So they've got an investment and they are only going to take so much risk. They want to know that you're going to sell the number of copies to not just recoup their investment, but make them money. So it's not easy to be traditionally published. It's not easy to find a publisher.
Now, did they give you an advance? Because I know with some people, they'll like say give them an advance of money, so many $100,000 or millions or whatever. And the thing is, the benefit of that for the author, so if they give you a cash advance, however much it is, you do not have to pay that back. So if the book ever sells enough to compensate the publishing house for that or not, they're taking a risk because they can't come back to you and be like, oh, well, you didn't sell $1 million worth of books. Can we have the 275,000 left or whatever? No, it doesn't work that way, but you won't get any more money until you sell enough books to meet that that threshold to cover the advance. So, and how
Exactly, exactly. And a $275,000 advance would be a rare, rare advance. That would be a Bill Clinton advance. That would be a somebody advance. An advance can be anywhere from a couple $1,000s. $20,000 is a decent advance for somebody. I know people that I've got a good friend who has, I think, 17 published books, and she's been on the New York Times bestseller list. And depending on the book, she will get anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 for an advance. And she's a writer. I mean, this is what she does. And she also always, for her next book, it's a struggle to find the right publisher and to get a publisher to say yes. So you can be published and you can have your name out there. And, like we started out with, if you're not Stephen King or John Grisham or, whoever, Joel Osteen, then getting a big advance and getting publishers is not the easiest road.
right. And so, like, I was talking earlier about like copyrights and stuff like that. Copyright.gov is where I go to get like all the music I write copyrighted. I did get my book copyrighted and everything like that. It's not necessary. I've been told the moment you start working on it, you automatically own the rights to it. But we're talking about maybe 50 or $60 or something like that just to have that extra layer of protection. So yeah, I yanked the bitch. I think if you go through a publishing house, it's different. I'm not sure who owns it. It may different depending on the contract. It may differ. How does that work? Who actually? Well, you said you signed the
Yeah.
rights to them, so
Right. But there's the ISBN number. So every book is assigned an ISBN number. And I think you do want that for sure. If you're going to write a book, get one. Like you said, they're $50 or whatever. You can buy packages of them. Like you can get 10 numbers for $100, or I don't know exactly how much, but they're easy to get. And then the book automatically goes into the Library of Congress. It is forever your name on the book. Nobody can steal your content. It is, it makes it an official book. It makes it a real book. And so that's something you want to do, is get that number.
and I think Bowker.com. I'll research it before I put it in the showy notes. But BOWKER.com, I think, is where I went to get my ISBNs. And they have like book ISBNs. Now I had used like a different website when I designed my underwear line for Down Under Apparel to get like clothing ISBNs. but this Boker one seems to be like what say like the Draft the Digital website recognizes. So so we gotta be careful where we get our ISBNs from. There's a lot of shit being sold in this world, and I don't think you can just get random mass ISBNs and just slap them on whatever. It has to be specific from what I'm learning so far. Seems like it's kinda specific to what you're trying to sell.
Exactly, exactly. You do need one for a book for sure. Yep. Yeah.
So oh, go ahead. Were you gonna say something, dear?
Nope. You go right ahead.
So we've talked about outlining the book, writing it, could be any sort of book, how to get help for that if you're not good with that sort of thing, the websites you can go to. So we've established the fact that you're not really some lonely, alone author sitting somewhere in front of a laptop trying to figure it out. You got all the fucking help you need. And of course, you can email Kim or me, that we'll be happy to tell you what we can. You are so not alone. So once you have this book out, and even if you are published through a publishing house, that doesn't mean that you have to sit back and let them do all the work. You could still market yourself if you want to. So most of what I'm saying, or pretty much all of what I'm saying has to do with self-publishing because I ain't selling my shit to nobody until I have a chance, to do it myself. If I could sell drugs and sell the military as a recruiter, I'm gonna see what I can do with my own book first before I let somebody buy my shit. And so now we're gonna talk about how can we get the word out? All your social media, making like a Facebook author page, I've been told is a really good idea. I didn't do that because I have a podcast page on Facebook and the book is the same name as the podcast. So it was kind of like a redundant thing for me, at least at this point. you know, now
Mhm.
once I release my next two books this year, then maybe I'll set up an author page, but I ain't got time to work with all that shit. I need to hire an assistant to do that. I'm running too many businesses. Like I'm at my breaking point. But
Yeah, that's another thing you can use Fiverr and places like that for is some of that kind of stuff that is sort of the busy work of marketing that you can get somebody to do it for you for not a ton of money. So you don't have to stay up at night wondering, why haven't I gotten it done? Or feeling overwhelmed with stuff. There are people out there, there are sources that you can tap into that will help you with stuff like that too.
yeah, so that's a good idea. So maybe so I'm working on a book called Don't Call Me a Christian, which is going to be a free book, but still it's a book. There's going to be a free ebook on my website. And then I'm writing a book of poetry too that will not be a free book. But so then I might go on Fiverr or somewhere like that and be like, hey, I need someone to just run this author page on Facebook, post. And because I look at your author page on Facebook and you got all the pictures going on and you're engaging with the audience and everything like that. I'm all like, that is such a great idea. Who has the time?
Oh my gosh, I hear you. It yeah, I get overwhelmed. My latest book, Love Is, was published on December 7th. And I have to keep telling myself it is a marathon, not a sprint. Like I want the book to sell thousands today. I want it in people's hands. I believe in the message just like you do your book. But you got to realize it's one person at a time. And then hopefully that person will tell somebody, you got to buy this book. It's a great book. And I think statistically, too, every one book that's actually out there, five people or seven people will read that book because people will share a book. And so, the numbers that you sell aren't necessarily the numbers of people that are reading it. And if you really want to monetize things, you got to figure out ways to do it. Like, I think you do such a great job of, like, I love your book cover is amazing and makes an amazing t-shirt, makes an amazing journal cover, right? Makes an amazing a lot of other things that then you can use Shopify or whoever to printful, to do those things for you and you don't even have to touch it. But figuring out other ways to monetize your product, not just the book itself, but what else can you do with it? What other programs can you do? Is there coaching that you can do along with it? Is there, webinars that you can hold or whatever that you can help promote the book, but also monetize it in another way?
That's pretty badass. I had not thought of that.
Well, that's why we're friends because what I don't think of, you do, and what you don't think of, I do.
Yeah, high five to that, sister. And so in terms of marketing also, there is a website called podmatch.com, and podcasting is huge. I have heard it said that it's a good idea if someone's gonna be an author, if they feel like they have the skill and they would care to do it, if they feel called to it, to start a podcast because the 2 can benefit each other. And so that was why the idea first came to me to start a podcast because people were telling me, "Hey, start a podcast if you're gonna write a book so you can start to get that audience building up." And so that's something to think about. So if you ever think you want to start a podcast, I recommend podmatch.com. My affiliate link will be in the show notes. You can sign up and so I can get paid. But it's a way that makes podcasting easy. You can go on this website. It's like Tinder, but for podcasting. And you can be a podcast host, a podcast guest on this website. You can sign up to find people to come on your show, or if you have a book and you don't want to do a podcast, or you can use other people's podcasts and their audiences that they've already established to market your book for you. You don't have to pay to go on someone's podcast. Now, through Podmatch, it's a free service. If you want to upgrade like me and pay the $39 a month, then you can have more access. But when it comes to book promotions, going on people's podcast is a huge thing that's trending right now. And podcasts, the industry is just growing and growing and growing, and you don't even have to pay for that. That's free fucking money. It's free. It's just free. And so we want to avoid websites out there who are going to try to charge you ridiculous amounts of money, like hundreds of dollars to go on like people's shows, saying this person's this great, they've got all this going on, but there are no guarantees. You may spend all that money and not get shit from that interview. And because you're going to have to grow your skills as a podcast guest and everything like that. And so through Podmatch, it's either free or you can pay 39 a month for more access to it. But it's a good service either way. There's just too many vultures out there looking to take advantage of artists and people who are just trying to express themselves.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. You do have to be on the lookout just like you do with everything else. You've got to be aware and be careful. And if something looks too good to be true, you got to know that it is too good to be true. Somebody promises you that they're going to sell so many of your books, it's not going to happen. Like unless they're personally going to buy 1,000 books, there's no guarantee that 1,000 books are going to be sold. So you got to ignore those things and do the hard work yourself.
Yeah, because before I fired the production team that I had previously, who I met through the same person who was the ghostwriter, who I also fired, they were charging me like $100 per person to find someone to come on my show for me to interview.
Oh my word.
Now, these
Wow.
are people that they already knew usually. So it's not like they had to do any kind of work but send a few emails. And so, but that's this sort of thing is common. It happens. Through Podmatch, I was able to stop paying them like $1,500 a month to work with my show and everything. And I learned how to do the shit myself. It's easy. I don't even have to actually go and look for people because they find me on Podmatch and ask me to come on my show. So I don't even have to. So I went from paying $100 a person to have someone come on my show to $39 a month to have unlimited amounts of people, trying to come on my show.
Right, right. Well, and they do have a free
That's it.
choice too. So you can even just do it for free. You're not going to necessarily get as many matches, but there are free things that you can do as well. But definitely worth it with Podmatch to pay the $39 a month. Absolutely.
But it's also a community, Kim. I learned Alex Sanfilippo is the genius that is behind what is Podmatch. They have like over 20,000, 25,000 people on Podmatch now, and it's always growing. And they've bought out other similar companies before because nobody's doing it better than they are. I learned where to get the equipment set up for my podcast and everything through Podmatch. Do you have a community there so you're not alone? Because a lot of people want to start a podcast and they're sitting there alone in their room, like, where the fuck do I begin? And then you go on the internet and you have all these people trying to sell you all this bullshit that you don't need. But through the Podmatch community, which is a different website, but you access it through podmatch.com, You can post a question. Hey, where do I start? You could just message Alex and Filippo, the founder, directly, and then he will tell you. I'll just throw it out there. I currently use a rodent mic and a Nexigo camera. They just plug into my mic. They just plug into my MacBook. There's no switchboards and switchery that needs to happen. Some people like to get complex with it. That's fine if you want a whole mixing soundboard, but I just plug this bitch in and go.
Hmm.
And I use the same mic to record my audiobook. And so and I learned about these things through talking to people on Podmatch, through researching and stuff like that. There's classes you can take and stuff like that. But the bottom line is that you're not by yourself. And when you're trying to be an author or a podcaster, it can get lonely because how many people do you know that are authors and podcasters?
Right. 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 Yeah. It's so important with anything that you do in life to connect, to know that you're not alone in it. I mean, that's part of the reason I wrote my books, and part of the reason you wrote your book is because you can relate to people. And it's good for people to know they're not the only one going through the things that they're going through. And so the same thing with being an author or a podcaster, so important to connect with the community.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna give Podmatch a little bit more of a plug. The website is so well designed. Basically, each person's profile is a media kit already, and you have access to the photos you can use, their history, biography, some questions they'd like to talk about, and everything like that. All their social media links. You know, Podmatch has done a great job of putting everything you need in front of you. The old production team that I had, they used to have to email each person that I was going to be interviewing to get the photos, find out the social media, get the biographies. Now you got to wait for their assistant to get back to my people, and then it's a whole thing. With Podmatch, it's all right there the moment you log the fuck in. My
Mhm.
life was made so much easier by this fucking website, and it saved me a shit ton of money, and it brought me into a community of people who I could trust who were not just trying to get more money from me.
Yeah, so true. So true. It is. It's the best tool. You introduced me to it, and it's the best tool I've seen out there for sure.
Yeah, I found Kim on matchmaker.fm, which is a similar website. And I just have a profile on there and I don't go on there at all. I just kind of leave it out there. And I said, whoever's meant to come to me through this will. I just left it. And then Kim found me on there, but I was like, oh no, girl, you're too good for matchmaker. You got to step your pussy up. It's time for you to upgrade ya. Like you are better. I wouldn't go my sister out there on matchmaker. Mm-mm. It's like Walmart. Matchmaker is like Walmart and Podmatch is like Prada.
It's true. It's true. I know. Yeah, I'm forever in your debt for that, for sure.
Okay, so we've taken the people from should I be an author? Hell, at this point, should I be a podcaster? Where the fuck do I begin? We've given them websites and tools to start. They have access to both of us. And then so we'll just see if this helps someone. So with that, you can just say anything you want to say and have the last word. I think we've done a good job.
Yeah, yeah, you've done a great job of explaining. I mean, there's so much more, right? There's always so much more that you can talk about, but looking for writers conferences, that's a good thing too, to attend a writers conference. You learn so much. There's always workshops on self-publishing and workshops on publishers. Sometimes you can even meet publishers, but looking for different ways to connect like that are a good thing to do as well. And read, I think it's so important that if you're going to be a writer, you need to be a reader and see what it is that you like and learn how to hone your craft.
Yeah. And when it comes to reading, so a friend of mine who read my book, I sent him over a copy. He was like, "Yeah, this is the first thing I've read in years." He was like, he couldn't put it down. The thing is, he was reading something he was interested in. So to be a good reader doesn't mean that you can just pick up every fucking book in the world and just zoom through it. You have to actually give a damn about what you're reading. And as simple as that sounds, it's something that I recently discovered about myself. Because reading the books that they made us in high school, fucking Canterbury Tales and shit like boring ass books, I was thinking maybe I don't like to read books. No, the problem was I wasn't reading shit that I was interested in. I
Mhm.
found that once I actually found the sort of shit that I like to read, now I'm one of those speed readers who I've envied and looked at them like, oh my God, how can you read a whole 200-page book in a day, or hell, even in a week? It would take me like months to just read like a fucking 200-page book because you know what? I thought it was boring. So you got to find books that you like. you know,
Mhm. Yeah. And I'll tell you, a book that people are going to love is yours. You are a great writer. You're a great storyteller. And there's no better book in my mind to read than a book that is by a great storyteller because you put people in the moment with you. You do a great job of setting the scene and letting people feel how you feel. And it is a book that is awfully hard to put down. So yes, people are gonna want to buy your book. Everyone listening, make sure as soon as that book is available out there, get your hands on it. You're gonna want it.
Oh, I appreciate that. I feel the same way about yours. And your books can be found at kimsorrelle.com. And of course, that will go in the showy notes as it does, as it always does. And so, yeah, well, thank you for coming on the show. Kim Sorrelle, author, lover of black licorice, cancer survivor. Her books are Love Is and Cry Until You Laugh, and they are available on Amazon.com.
And lots of other places if you're an Amazon hater.
And that's all through your website, though. They can find all the places through your website.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's always so fun to be with you.
Absolutely. Till next time, my dear.
All righty.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devannon at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon. It's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.